Hello, I'm Soycat, and have you ever wondered about the last true enigma on the world map, the Western Sahara? You can clearly see that this isn't labelled as its own country, but it has a dash between it and Morocco, and so whether this is Africa's last colony, or whether this is a full-fat part of Morocco that simply has insurgents controlling the interior, is something that is up for debate, and many countries choose not to touch it with a 10-foot stick, including Google Maps as you can see, but it has caused a huge dispute between Algeria and France. This diplomatic dispute is increasing almost every single day, and now it has escalated to the point of tit-for-tat expulsion of diplomats. They have expelled the diplomats from each other's countries, and basically things look like they're not getting better anytime soon. And so why is Algeria going through this? Well, let's explain Algeria's geopolitical position, because simply put, they are the biggest nation in Africa, and they have the resource that everyone in the world wants. That's right, they have dinosaur juice. In fact, the 16th largest dinosaur juice reserves in the world, and although that doesn't sound that high by itself, it means they export 1 million barrels a year, more than Brazil and China above them, and it means that they have this great position of being right next to Europe and having a lot of oil, which means they can maintain friendly relations without having to maintain friendly relations. In other words, they know that the Europeans need them, which is great because they don't want to be that friendly with Europe, broadly speaking, because you might be familiar with the fact that France didn't see any of its territories or colonies as territories and colonies, and so during the decolonization wave that happened after World War II, a lot of places would say that, yeah, just like how France viewed its territory in Germany as being temporary, France viewed its control of Morocco and Tunisia as being temporary, they did not have the same view towards Algeria, and they said, no, Algeria is a part of France, the same way that you might say Toulouse is a part of France, or Carcassonne is a part of France. Great board game, probably a great city too, I'm going to assume. But what they basically said that, no, this is France, and so in the same way we wouldn't let those places go independent, neither can Algeria. Algeria had a big guerrilla war, maybe committed some war crimes depending on your position, and then became an independent nation, but as a military-controlled democracy, they do have some strong suspicions of all Europeans, which is the exact opposite way that their neighbor Morocco plays things. Morocco basically takes the exact opposite stance. Instead of saying, we work with the Europeans when we have to, Morocco wants to work with Europe all they can. Morocco is very pro-EU, Morocco is very pro-US. In fact, fun fact, Morocco is the only country to apply for the European Union that just got flatly told, no, I think we can only accept European states, despite the fact that Cyprus has joined in half control of its territory, and specifically not in Europe by geography, but we'll leave that to the side. Anyway, Morocco tried to join the EU, and in 2020, Morocco normalized relations with Israel, which is a big deal for an African nation, particularly in this region of the world, and so this led to the start of what you might describe as a break in the, basically, Morocco and Algeria are in very, very bleak times right now, because they've been trying to work things out for a while. Algeria and Morocco are at a they're coming to a head with the way that they agree that the world should be going, and unfortunately, Algeria decided that, you know what, in exchange for whatever Morocco's doing in their pro-West stance, and indeed because of Algeria's kind of stance on how people should determine and their very anti-colonial view, they think that the Western Saharan people, the simplest way to describe it is they believe that the people who live there shouldn't have to be controlled by Morocco, they should be able to have their own country, and so they support, again, what you might describe as insurgents in another country's territory. Morocco is not a fan of this, and so what does Morocco do? They support insurgencies in Algeria. Any separatist groups, they get funded by Morocco, and so now Morocco and Algeria are on such poor terms that they actively are at the point of funding the dissolution of the other country. It's not a great place to be in, and that's why you can describe the two countries as not being like, oh yeah, in a place that just has high tensions. It's at the point where you actively have to describe like, well, are they going to go to war with each other? It really does seem as though the idea of a direct conflict is possible, even if modest, but there are lots of things that will raise the risk, because right now, both countries seemingly keep on escalating tensions and never dealing with the problems they have already. Now, this is where the writer, again, their name is Bouliem Sansel, but basically, there was a writer who suggested quite strongly that during the colonial era, France gave too much land to Algeria and too little to Morocco. And at risk of being, detained by the Algerian authorities, if you look at the size of Algeria and the size of Morocco, minus the Western Sahara, or add it if you want to, you can see what they're going for there, right? So Algeria, as the largest nation in Africa, arguably got all of that land because France was saying, yes, this is French land in the Africa, we will have it for ourselves. And, maybe you could argue that's their fault, but basically this writer argued that more should have gone to Morocco. And what's the worst thing you can say to an Algerian? Morocco should have more things and you should have fewer. And so what happened? Well, they jailed her, right? And this is something that France views as unacceptable. You can't, like someone just stating their opinion is not something that should cause a big issue. And that has led for the tit-for-tat expulsions, which we get right now. With France saying Algerian authorities have chosen escalation. Instead of simply releasing the person, they recalled their ambassadors, and so the same has happened in reverse. And it gets even worse because an Algerian consular was arrested with 2 other people last Friday because they kidnapped an Algerian influencer and then released them in the forest, whatever that means. And basically, Algeria said, you can't just arrest our consular officials. That's not how it works. And so they led to the expulsion of French officials, and then France has done the same. And now basically there needs to be a level-headed conversation. But the problem is when you have a country that is very, very strongly convinced that it is in the right and has a grip of its country that works that way, it's very hard to concede any defeat in that one. Anyway, so Algeria is now at the point where what started as a simple spat with their neighbor and a simple writer saying maybe their neighbor should have more has turned into a giant dispute with one of the world's largest countries by economy, France. That is a big deal, and it's something which is hugely interesting. France and Algeria have fallen out, and the interesting fallout of this, in my opinion, so first of all, I need to clarify, I do have a personal connection to Algeria. So all of my family, none of my family live in London except for my brother, and then the rest of the family that live in London are the Muslim side of my family from Algeria. And I've mentioned before, but some of them want to move back there. They're like, we live in. By the way, I know I'm not beating the Londonistan. I'm not beating the Londonistan allegations with this one, but we'll talk about that later. But the interesting thing is that, a lot of them are like, we'll move back to Algeria. We've lived in London our whole lives, but I reckon Algeria is about the same. And I'm like, I feel like this is something that a surprising number of people from countries think is like, I bet we could go back to where we were and it'd be fine. And they did just build a metro. I believe it's described as North Africa's first. It is a very exciting place, but Algeria is sadly kind of locked in that middle income trap because, right now, if you think about it this way, right, just the simplest way to measure this is right now if you look at the world's largest oil exporters, because Venezuela doesn't export a lot, but Saudi Arabia does, and that's because they consume about a third of what they produce. The same is true for Iran to a lesser extent, but if you look at countries like Canada, and if you look at countries like, if we look at the United States pumps out 7 million barrels a day, it's just they need 18 million. Canada pumps out 3 million, but they use most of those themselves, because being a high-income country means that you use a lot of oil, and this is actually great for the wider economy and for the people of a country to be using so much oil. Bad for the planet, you can make the argument, whatever, but Algeria's in this great situation where they pump out 1.4 million barrels a day, and their country, despite containing as many people, let's get this number right, 46 million people, that is larger than most EU members besides the top 4, despite being effectively a 5th largest EU member worthy in there, they use an amount of oil that is substantially less, and so right now the oil can be under the control of the government, whereas if it were to spread through the population, it would be harder. This is kind of a problem that a lot of countries have, where it's not in the interests of an elite to get the income level above a certain point. And this is, a deeper concern that you can raise for lots of nations around the world, but basically it's very, very hard to get to that point, and the simplest thing that Algeria could do and should do is work to have good ties with your neighbors. The whole thing we're learning about the trade dispute in the world, right? In fact, I bet I'll go to just the homepage of BBC News and the word tariff will be in here somewhere. Wow, it's not. It's actually, we're talking about people being deported to El Salvador instead. But you know what? I guess that's, at least that means we're not dealing with that now, right? Right. Anyway, the important thing here is that the tariff situation kind of is proof that trade with your neighbors is so important that to turn it off, effectively to apply an infinite % tariff on your neighbors, really bad idea. And sure, you might want to, I think when you get really invested in these ethnic conflicts, it might keep some people on side in some weird way, but I think the most effective way to run a nation is actually to work with as many people as you can. I think that personally, maybe this is just me being a European slash USAian, but I think that Morocco's stance is probably the smart one to have. Working with the global players and trying to be a part of their plans is better than saying, no, we're aloofly going to sit in the corner and you're going to buy our oil and that is how it's going to be. But Algeria thinks differently, and even though, again, I think mentioned many times here, the simplest solution here is that all you need to have is a simple chat where you're like, okay, both of us don't want bad things to happen. How do we solve the fact that you are doing things you shouldn't be doing in our territory, and how do we deal with the fact that yes, that is something that we don't like, and you don't like the fact that we are getting rid of your ambassadors and telling you not to arrest writers. How do we solve that issue in a real way? Algeria doesn't think that that is so important right now, but should they is maybe an interesting question, because you could equally play the other side and say, you know what, no, actually, Africa has taken orders from Europe for too long. It's time to go back in the inverse way. But yeah, with that said, I do have to say, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Actually, I want to give you a quick reminder. Algeria is one of the countries you couldn't travel to for a very long time, but right now, this is the only part of Algeria you shouldn't travel to. Their borders with all other countries are, you might get it. If you get within 30 kilometers of their borders, you might have some issues. Meanwhile, going to Morocco is fine, except for going to Western Sahara, where weirdly you actually can visit just fine, which now makes me kind of want to. You can visit all of Western Sahara as long as you stay 30 kilometers northwest of the Berm boundary line, which is a big line that is the reason that the insurgents have controlled so much for so long. Or am I saying insurgents wrong? The rightful claimers to the land? Anyway, so yeah, in the same way we just made a video about how Western Sahara isn't going to be going independent anytime too soon. The world map won't be changing to add this. But in the meantime, you get this fun situation where Western Sahara isn't a country, by anyone's admission, but it has two capitals. There is a capital thing over here in Laayoune, and there's a capital over here in Tifariti, which, man, that's not much of a capital, is it? But yeah, fun fact, I guess. There is a very, very interesting thing to look into if you want to here, but the simplest explanation is that the Western Sahara will continue to cause mild headaches for Morocco, and presumably also their neighbor, and isn't that fun? Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. Oh, wait, one more thing. So yesterday's video, here it is, by the way. This was made under the Google trend idea that like, oh, YouTube is so sure that you will watch this, and I was sure that they were wrong, but weirdly you can see, not just of the views that slowly spike up here, but if we look at the impression click-through rate, usually videos start high as, the most motivated subscribers click, and then it slowly recommends to more and more people until the click rate goes down. But in this case, a large number of people after 21 hours were like, okay, I didn't want to click it the first time, but you got me, Toycat. I want to learn about things I might not have known about Europe. And although it's going back down again, it is very notable. Also notable is the fact that the MS Paint thumbnail was clearly too high quality because people clicked on this thumbnail more. So we'll set this as the main thumbnail for that video now. And also, I said in the comments of that video, the top rated comment would be the video title for the next one. But this is, the video title is YouTube said you should make a video about this, then you were going to make a video, now you've made a video, everything's ticking along nicely. I think that is more than the YouTube character limit, and also it's not a video idea. So should we go through every reason France sucks, or exploring European countries' diasporas, why you should and shouldn't visit every country in Europe, or indeed, the worst places to visit in the summer? Or, as Glad Levy says, should we go through the top 10 countries by inflation rate? Anyway, does this change daily or does it change weekly? Let's find out right now. This video was going to end perfectly on time. But anyway, trends show us IBX Toycat things to do in Minecraft is the thing that we should make the most. Who is IBX Toycat? Yeah, that doesn't look like anything I have any idea about. Anyway, so if we look through these, we can see new countries that will exist soon. Countries of declining population, that's fun. Top 10 biggest myths about our economy. Top 10 most populated countries. That'd be such an easy video. Easy video time. I'm excited. Anyway, with that said, hope you all enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Oh, also, can anyone explain this to me? Oh, yeah. So if you look, the amount of earnings from Patreon went from $130 a month to $155 in April so far, by the way. But what's weird is if you look at the membership, you can see we have the same number of paid members. You can become a free Patreon member, by the way, and you can see things there. I didn't know you could become a free Patreon member, but you can. But yeah, what's interesting is you can see the number of paid members is the same. It hasn't gone up or down. No one's changed. But the amount we've earned has gone up. It's very exciting. It's it's like getting a pay rise, but not even understanding why or who from. Anyway, second channel, don't care. Goodbye. If the video is too long, it's not my problem. Find a YouTuber who does more important things, like this video was actually sponsored by a mental health service that will not actually help with your mental health and might sell your data to third parties. That's right, it's going to patreon.com and giving me all of your money. It won't help you, but it'll help my mental health. Probably. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.